right, Madridistas, wow. I was not going to make another video today. I did one this morning, but I have to. Florentino Perez just gave a press conference, and I have never seen him like this in my life. In the 20 plus years that he's been at the head of this club, this was amazing. I mean, he was so upset and raw and defiant, and he just absolutely he really let it out. And I'm going to go through, I was taking notes very quickly, and I'm just going to go through them because the messaging was so powerful. And you could tell that he's just so upset at what's happening in the press, and all the things going on in terms of the noise around Real Madrid. He was incredibly defiant, very upset, very pissed off at the press. But let's run through it. The first thing he said is, I'm calling for elections. Okay, I am calling for elections, and I'm going to run. People have used the situation currently of the club to attack me personally. And that is not something that I'm going to put up with. There were rumors about my health, that I had cancer. He says all of this is completely ridiculous. All of this stuff is designed to discredit me and to tarnish the image of the club. And that is something that the press is doing incessantly. He says, I am going to call for elections. And for anybody that is upset, they can go ahead and run, and you can present yourself at the elections, and you'll have your opportunity. If you think that you can do a better job and you want to take, he says, there are people that want to take control of this club, the greatest sporting asset in the world, and there are people with vested interest in getting a hold of this club that want to change the ownership structure. But I am going to defend the socios until the day I die, and I am not going to go anywhere. I am going to make sure that this club remains in the hands of socios, come hell or high water, because there are people, and the press is mixed into all of this, that have a vested interest in destabilizing the club and other people, and want the ownership of this club to change hands. But I will not do it. This club belongs to socios, and that is not going to change as long as I have anything to do with it. In terms of the situation of the club, he says, how quickly we forget that I, as president, have won 37 titles and 7 European Cups. This is the greatest club in the world and the greatest sporting entity on earth in every single respect. He says, I am not the owner of this club. I represent the socios. They are the owners of this club, and it is my job to represent them. People are taking advantage of the situation to try and tarnish our image. Whoever is unhappy, like I say, he says, go ahead and present yourself in elections. I am definitely going to run. Then he had a back and forth with a bunch of journalists, and he had a really big back and forth with a journalist okay, there's a publication in Spain called ABC. So in the big newspapers in Spain, you have El País, which is sort of kind of left-leaning, and ABC, which is sort of right-leaning. And he says, I've been a subscriber to ABC my entire life, since my father was alive. And he goes, I had to unsubscribe because of the lies and the crap that they are printing about Real Madrid. Why is ABC trying to tarnish Real Madrid? Why is ABC constantly writing negative articles about Real Madrid? He says, he goes, my father, he wouldn't believe it, that I had to unsubscribe to ABC, a newspaper that he would read religiously, because of the crap and the things that you're saying about the club that are all totally untrue. So anyway, a lot of that was about, discrediting, saying that he's sick and all of that. He says, ABC took one quote, and he used this as an example, so there was an article in ABC saying that Florentino Perez told his inner circle that he was very tired. And Florentino says, well, of course I'm tired. I'm president of Real Madrid, the biggest sporting club in the world, and I run the biggest infrastructure company in the world that has 170,000 employees and does business around the world. He goes, of course I'm a little tired, but I'm absolutely fine. But these are the type of articles that are designed to destabilize the club. Okay, he says, and then he said, and I'm really happy that he mentioned this, because I mentioned this in the video this morning, that not enough of English language YouTube talks about the Negreira thing and the referee situation in Spain, but he tackled it head on. He said, we should be talking about the real issues in this country, like the Negreira scandal, which is the greatest scandal in the history of football, and it is unimaginable that this could be happening in 2026 in a country like Spain. all these refs are disciples of Negreira. It's the same refs, and that this country can just sort of pretend that nothing happened. He goes, we've submitted the paperwork to FIFA and UEFA, and they're reviewing everything, and we're following the legal case in Spain very closely because it is the biggest scandal in the history of sports. And those are the type of things that I am fighting for, to bring justice and a fair liga where we can compete. So anyway, he insisted over and over about the fact that he wants to protect the ownership structure of the club, that the socios are the owners of the club, and he never wants to see that change, that his father made him a socio when he was little, and it means the world to him, and that no matter what happens, he wants to make sure that Real Madrid remains in the hands of socios, and he constantly implied that there are other people out there that have vested interests in gaining control of the club for their own personal financial gain, but he insists that he will do everything in his power to make sure that the club stays in the hands of socios. He repeated that many, many times. He reminded us as well that when he arrived at the club, he goes, I spent so much of my own personal money, and this is a true story, of his own money. I can't remember, it was like 30 or 40 million. He didn't mention the amount of his own money. He goes, when I arrived, the club owed Roberto Carlos money. We didn't have money to pay Roberto Carlos' salary. He goes, even the stores, the shops around the Bernabeu, the club owed money even to the shopkeepers in the stadium. He goes, that's the situation that I inherited, and I used my money, my personal money, to turn the club around. So this club means absolutely the world to him. So anyway, he continued to talk about the socio thing. He really talked about that over and over. Again, that there are people with economic interests that are, that want to change the ownership structure. I don't know exactly who he's referring to, but he said that over and over. He says, so I'm calling for elections. And if you think you have a better platform, go ahead and do it. Again, the socio thing he went over. And then, of course, he mentioned the Negreira thing again and again. He goes, how can it possibly be that this is happening? And he says, and why is it that the Spanish press is so interested in discrediting and tarnishing the image of Real Madrid? Real Madrid, he goes, everybody in Spain should be proud of Real Madrid. Real Madrid is the biggest club in the world, the greatest club in the world. We have 800 million followers worldwide. I mean, just think about that. 800 million followers worldwide, which is unbelievable. He says that everything that I've tried to do, even initiatives like the Super League and all that, he goes, and all what we want is to bring Real Madrid to everybody in the world for free. He goes, what we want is everyone. He said, Real Madrid is universal, it's global. Real Madrid is for the world. Real Madrid is universal, and everybody in the world, like Madridismo, is for everybody. And we want to make sure that people in every corner of the world have access to Real Madrid, and they can watch it for free in every corner of the world. He says a lot of the battles that I have fought were with that goal in mind. Okay, they tried to ask him about the manager situation, but he wouldn't go there. So he immediately, somebody mentioned Mourinho, and he just kind of changed the subject. They did ask him about the fights in the dressing room, and he said, look, these fights are totally normal. He goes, I've been aware of millions of these fights over the years. The only difference is that this one got out. This one got out, and we don't know how or why, but this one got out. But that's the only difference. He says, I have seen players beat the crap out of each other. This has been going on forever. But at the end of the day, they're friends. This is something that happens that's very normal. I mean, he really played it down, and it sounds like it's a lot more common than we think. But by reading between the lines, I take that to mean that maybe he's not interested in selling Fede. Maybe he thinks that everything is fine, that they'll shake hands and everything is okay. Because he certainly seemed to dismiss it in terms of it being sort of not a really big deal. Again, he talked about there was a lot of emphasis on the press, trying to destabilize, but he was very aggressive. Like, I've never seen him so expressive. I mean, he doesn't make a lot of public appearances, and when he does, he's usually very, very soft-spoken. He went back to the Negreira issue again, and he said, how is it possible that money went from Barca into the hands of the head of refs? He goes, how is that even just the concept? How is that imaginable in any country in the world? How is that even possible that happened? And he said, and I'm kind of glad he did say this, because I feel very strongly about this. And it so happens that I mentioned it in my video this morning. I mean, it's a huge coincidence, but he says, I won 7 European Cups and I only won 7 Ligas. And I only won 7 Ligas instead of 14 because the other 7 were stolen from me. And he says, and we can see this week in and week out. And anybody can see it. These are the same refs that were there with Negreira, and they're still here. And we're going to do everything in our power to correct this because they have destroyed and tarnished the image of La Liga, which I have to say I totally agree with. And I mentioned it this morning that it is... like for example, this year, Barca played better, but the point differential is totally distorted. And what happened last year as well. I mean, I'm very happy he said that because I completely agree with him on that front. And I do criticize a lot of English language YouTubers for not mentioning this enough. But again, he said there's a coordinated effort to destabilize the club, that we're the greatest club in the world. But anyway, he was just unbelievably outspoken. I mean, I've never seen him, he started the interview kind of angry and defiant. Then it kind of got a little bit cynical because he had a lot of back and forth with other journalists. And then by the end, he was kind of laughing and joking. But he made his statement very, very clear. And by the way, another thing he said is we should be backing our players. We shouldn't be as critical as we are with our players. I thought, Madridismo tends to be very critical of players. That's part of the culture. But he sort of said, they are like our children. We need to support them. We need to give them all the support in the world. Now, this is where I, of course, differ with him. I think that our players should be reprimanded and they should hear it from us when they don't play well. But he said that we need to be a lot more supportive to our players, and we should support them a lot more instead of being so critical. He said that he was very proud of getting rid of the Ultrasur. He said that they were just a group of people that were just toxic. They brought toxicity to the stadium, and that they were just a negative influence. They're hypercritical about players, and that they were just an element. He's very proud that he kicked them out, and he says, and they will never return to the Bernabeu. And then he kept insisting on the press thing. He says, why is it that every newspaper in this country is just obsessed with criticizing Real Madrid and like harping on and on about how bad the situation is? Why don't they ever write about Atletico de Madrid? He sort of says, why is it always the story? But he says, look, things don't change from one day to the next, okay? Just because you have 1 or 2 bad years does not change anything. We're the greatest club in the world, and nobody comes close. And all of the accomplishments of this club, that does not get erased in a year or 2. And he sort of said, I'm very proud of my accomplishments, and I'm going to stay here. So calling for elections, if anybody has the balls, go ahead. You got another agenda, and you want to try to change things, you're going to have to get the votes of the socios, and you're going to have to defeat me in an election. So if you want to do it, go ahead, make my day kind of thing. So a very defiant attitude, but he laid a lot of things to rest. In terms of the day-to-day stuff that we discuss, he wouldn't talk about the managers at all. He did defend the players a lot, and that seems to be the case, that he probably over-defends them, and that's one of the critiques I have on my channel, is that Florentino tends to baby the players too much. But he didn't want to talk about the manager and the current situation. He sort of said, look, yeah, we're going through a bad period. He goes, but bad periods happen. He goes, they've happened many times in the past, but think about all the glorious periods we have, because no other club in the world has had anything near what we have had in terms of periods of success. So he really kind of put it all into a kind of historic context, and I think kind of does... because in the day-to-day today, there's just so much criticism, so much negativity. He did sort of zoom out and say, you guys, get your shit. What are you talking about? Like, we're still the greatest club in the world. Nobody even come close. Yeah, we're going through a tough period, but we'll get out of it because we always do. So anyway, I thought it was really interesting, very expressive. And I think, put to rest a lot of the issues regarding his health and all of that. And Florentino, it sounds like, I thought he had 1 or 2 years left. He's not going anywhere. He said it. I'm not going anywhere. I have to be reelected, obviously, but as long as I'm elected, I'm not going anywhere. So anyway, that's what he said. I thought was really interesting because he's been so quiet during this whole period. And everybody was wondering what's going on because he's not making any appearances. That's why, rumors circulating that he was sick. But no, he came out swinging, very defiant. And I think that we're going to have some Florentino Perez for a few more years by all accounts. But anyway, that's as good a summary as I can give you. I thought it was really interesting. I wasn't going to make another video, but there it is. Tell me what you think in the comment section. I always love your feedback. So there it is. Let me know your thoughts. Love you guys. See you in the next video. And as always, I'm Madrid.